Welcome back to another episode of JailBreak Overlander. I'm Richie, and this is JailBreak. And in this episode, I'm going to take you down some really strange roads in Arizona. Arizona has long stretches of nothing but desert scrub, tumbleweeds, and road runners. But they also have a lot of empty, desolate buildings that have been turned into desert art. And I'm going to show you some of that in this video. But the one thing I did not expect to find was a gate to hell. And in the town of Two Guns, Arizona, that's exactly what I found. And the history behind it is amazing. So sit back, relax, and check this out. So here I am on the side of Route 40 West in a town called Two Guns, Arizona. And I had just pulled out of a rest stop, and on the other side of the highway, I noticed some abandoned buildings. So I drove, and after 20 miles, I took an exit, and I came all the way back. And I'm glad I did. What I thought was just abandoned gas stations and a couple of dilapidated pueblos was way more than I could have ever imagined. This is one of the most intense videos I've ever made, and the history behind this goes back to the late 1800s. It's pretty amazing, and I had no clue what I stumbled on until I got back, looked it up on the internet, and realized this was the real deal. This was a good-sized community at one point, but it was run down, sitting on the edge of what's called Devil's Canyon. The history of this town literally rivals Tombstone, if you can believe that. And I just stumbled upon it. These pueblos were amazing. It looked like it used to be a tourist attraction, but nobody was taking care of it. This building right here, this was what I would find out was the entrance to the gates of hell. I noticed a lot of caverns underneath. I walked around the entire perimeter, but still had no idea what was in store for me. This particular building seemed to be calling me, and I answered. And what I found inside was disconcerting, to say the least. If you're familiar with Satanism or Aleister Crowley, you'll recognize a lot of the symbols and sigils that were in here. Now, I said a prayer right before I walked in, and I carved John 3:16 into one of the timbers right away. But still, I had no clue what I was in for. Now, whether you believe or don't believe in Satanism, a lot of people practice it, and I'm familiar with it. And looking around here, somebody spent a lot of time and a lot of energy putting sigils and satanic symbols all over the place. So I didn't realize I still didn't understand the gravity of my situation. So I walked around the entire place and I filmed it, and I'm going to show that to you. But what you want to see is actually underground, and we'll get to that. You're going to have to hang on. So just walking around, I could tell that this was once a tourist destination. You could see the remnants of the old guardrails to keep people from falling down these ever-present holes and cracks that were everywhere. These holes went straight down, it would appear, but I still didn't understand what I was standing on. I spent all my time walking around and looking at all the buildings, pathways, nooks and crannies that were absolutely everywhere. And bear in mind, I found this just because I noticed it out of the corner of my eye. There were no signs, there was no tourist destination. This was dilapidated, and you can see this walkway hasn't been used in a long, long time. Now, this entire community is built on the edge of Canyon Diablo. Canyon Diablo in Spanish was truly lawless. When the town was founded in 1880, the closest law enforcement was over 100 miles away. The 2,000-person town was considered meaner than Tombstone and Dodge City combined. Saloons, brothels, gambling dens operated 24 hours a day on quote-unquote Hell Street. Drifters, gamblers, and outlaws flocked to the small town. Diablo's first peace marshal was sworn in at 3 p.m. and killed by 8 p.m. Many citizens went the same route, ending up in Canyon Diablo's Boot Hill. A man named Herman Wolf stood out. The mountain man and beaver trapper was born in 1831 in northern central Germany, and his headstone can be found at this site. After immigrating to the States and heading out west, Wolf owned a trading post on the Little Colorado River north of Leeup. To avoid being robbed, he buried his profits around fences on his property. He ran his trading post from 1869 to 1899. It is said he died a natural death there, and his body was shipped to Canyon Diablo for burial. Since natural deaths were uncommon for the time and place, Wolf is often said to be the only man close to the lawless community to experience one. According to many writings, the story of Two Guns, Arizona could easily be described as a Shakespearean tragedy on Route 66. It's been quoted that it has all the workings of a modern-day Hamlet. Murder, madness, and supernatural superstitions dotting its colorful history. Now, Two Guns, originally known as Canyon Lodge, started out as a modest trading post at the beginning of the 19th century, run by a couple of homesteaders by the names of Mr. and Mrs. Daniel B. Oldfield. A few more westward pioneers staked claim to the area over the years, and by the early 1920s, the road through town, known as the National Trail Highway, became the preferred route across Diablo Canyon. When Earl and Louis Cundiff blew into town, they swooped up 320 acres of the land, making Canyon Lodge a busy stop for travelers. By the late 20s, what was once the National Trail Highway was blossoming into the famed Route 66. And the once isolated trading post was evolving into a bustling stop for incoming drivers needing gas, food, and oil. This quickly escalating prosperity caught the attention of a man named Harry Miller, a well-educated veteran of the Spanish-American War and an audacious publicist. Miller was an eccentric man who claimed to be full-blooded Apache and was known for his garish and unpleasant demeanor. Wanting a piece of the action, Harry Two Guns Miller allegedly struck a deal with the Cundiffs to lease a business site for 10 years. Under Miller's watch, the trading post was turned into a full-blown tourist trap, renamed Two Guns. He grew out his hair and braided it, taking on a persona by the name of Chief Crazy Thunder. He started a zoo with chicken wire cages that held mountain lions and other native Arizona animals, and started tours down into Canyon Cave, now called Apache Death Cave, where 42 Apache men met their death in battle. The story of the cave was interesting in its own right, but Miller believed that the tale needed something more. He cleaned up the remaining bones he found in the cave, built fake ruins, and repurposed the tomb into a cave dwelling. In a macabre commercial stroke of genius, he saved the skulls of the ill-fated Apache and sold them as souvenirs. In order to make the cave a bit more tourist-friendly, he also strung up some electric lights, threw in a soda stand, and renamed the Death Cave the Mystery Cave. It was around that time people say the curse of Two Guns began. So that's a little bit of the published history on this area. But here's what I discovered as far as the Death Cave. The entire time that I was filming this and walking around, I did notice that there was all sorts of caverns and such down below, but didn't realize that this was a death cave because there was no signs, there was no nothing. I found this simply by happenstance. And then I found my way deep under this rock. And fortunately, I had the nerve to bring a flashlight, a lantern, and a couple of cameras. This is truly crazy. I had no idea the history behind any of this whatsoever. So I'm about to take you down about 50 feet underground, and I'm going to travel underground all this distance, which is quite a long way. All starting right here at this one pueblo that is absolutely saturated with satanic symbolism, burnt offerings, history, folklore, and Apache deaths. It all started right here, and I was dumb enough to go down with a camcorder, a GoPro, one flashlight, and a prayer. So follow me down. Here we go. There were plenty of openings underneath this structure, and again, these are all 30 to 40 to 50 feet down, but they all just seem to be small chambers, little nooks and crannies, sleeping quarters, etc. I couldn't find anything that was worthy of a cave, and bear in mind, I had no idea at the time that I was looking for the famous Death Cave. I was just trying to get some footage underground. There were so many ways to get in and under, but none of them went anywhere at all. But again, that was about to change. I had literally stumbled onto the historic Death Cave on Route 66 at Devil's Canyon and had no clue. Somewhat hidden under this very, very dilapidated bridge was the opening I was looking for, and it was not easy to find, but I did find it. So underneath this dilapidated bridge, down about another 20 feet, there's a crevice in the rocks that leads into the Death Cave. I'm going to show it to you from two different cameras. I'm going to let you hear what I thought as I was doing it, and then I'm going to tell you the actual history and why it's called the Death Cave afterwards. It's incredibly fortuitous that I found this, that I got the camera angles that I had, and that I went back in one more time with one more camera. Now bear in mind, my truck's sitting up there, I'm all alone in Arizona, nobody knows where I am, and I have one flashlight with one tiny battery. Now if you know me, you know I have probably 20 flashlights in the truck. I brought this one with me. As you can see, I'm going way down. This is not a tourist attraction. It's not even, there's no mention of it. I found this simply because I stumbled upon it. And it was amazing. But in hindsight, it's fairly dangerous down here. And the curse, I would suspect, is real. Because so many people have gone here and done satanic offerings, satanic worship, etc. That does indeed draw in bad energy. Big time. But like I said, the moment I walked into the building that marked this location up top, I carved John 3:16 right into the timber. No fear. The hand of God protected me as I traveled through here. This was utterly insane, and it had many characteristics that you would find in the Great Pyramids in Egypt. No kidding. Look up Graham Hancock if you don't know what I'm talking about. Lots of similarities. Holy shit. do that. Wow. Holy shit. Okay, here's the history of the Death Cave as it's been recorded. By 1871, the Navajo Indians were employing a new strategy of defense against raiding Apache Indians. When the Apaches appeared, one group gave battle while another raced south to block their exit over the Mogollon Rim. Almost always, the Apaches followed the Navajo Trail along the east side of Canyon Diablo and through Chavez Pass. After this went on for some time, the Apaches began disappearing without a trace. The Navajo group blocking the escape route never once saw them. Then, in 1878, they discovered the secret of the successful evasion. That June, Apaches struck a community of Hogans at dawn in the Melgosa Desert. All the men, women, and children, except 3 young girls taken prisoner, were slain. Robbing the dead and pilfering the Hogans, the band of 20 disappeared into serried wastelands along the river. At the same time, a second raiding party hit a cluster of Hogans near Garces Mesa and looted without taking any prisoners. District leaders, sometimes called district chiefs, Natani and Redshirt, raced south with 25 fighting men. Ahead of the raiders, they lurked on the Mogollon Rim trails waiting to ambush them. But the wily Apaches did not come through. Puzzled, the Navajo war party started home with scouts on its side as flankers. A messenger sent to find them delivered more tragic news. the same raiding bands had struck north of the river again. Many more Navajos had lost their lives in a blood holocaust. This time a wounded man, thought to be dead by the raiders, had survived. He recognized their leader, known to them as Crooked Jaw. Although not deformed, their jaws were not symmetrical. He was Nachis, son of the famed chief Cochise. The Navajos were badly puzzled by the raiders' failure to take good horses and their mysterious vanishing act. Their several trails below the river split off, disappearing into the Malpais and volcanic cinder country. Scouts were dispatched in pairs on fast horses in a desperate attempt to locate the enemy before it escaped to the country. Bougetin, Biguet, and Bahé proceeded to the cave at Two Guns. In the late afternoon, they approached undetected by crawling through the grass, tall weed, and sagebrush towards the rim, intending to reconnoiter. As he moved slowly forward, Bahé was startled when hot air struck his face. At the same time, sounds of voices reached his ears. Overcoming brief panic caused by the weird occurrence, he found an earth crack almost directly beneath his face. It obviously gave into an underground cavern. The Apaches were hiding in it. Retreating to the ponies, the two scouts raced back to the river with this important news. The three leaders ordered their fighting men in motion at once. Arriving as sunset glow marked the distant San Francisco mountains, waiting until full night shrouded the plateau world, the jubilant Navajos closed in. The cave is situated in a side canyon of Diablo, directly behind Two Guns. At the time, the entrance was concealed by a solid stone natural bridge long since fallen in. A narrow tunnel-like passage, stone walls higher than a man's head, led under into the cave. It was wide enough to lead a horse through. This the Apaches had done, therefore leaving no giveaway pony herd grazing on the flat terrain around the side canyon. Stealing in afoot, the Navajos blocked all possibilities of escape for the hated enemy. The two outside guards were shot down. The Navajo leaders had decided their vengeance strategy. Once realizing the terrible end planned for them, the Apaches grew desperate. Sorties into the narrow space in attempts to drive the Navajos off were annihilated almost instantly by the riflemen above. When the brush and wood filled the passageway, the mass was set afire. As fast as it burned partway down, more fuel was added. The smoke and fumes sucking into the cave reappeared from several surface cracks on the plateau. Only once during the night did this telltale death sign ended. The conflagration was allowed to die down in order to find out what had happened. With what little water they had and blood from pony-cut throats, the Apaches had extinguished the fire directly in the cave mouth. They had then attempted to seal the entrance with rocks and quarters from killed ponies. The one thing I failed to mention in this video is the cave extended further than I was able to go. There's footprints on the ground that show me that people have squozed through this crevice, and there's another room back there that I couldn't access. I tried, but I would have gotten stuck between the rocks. At 240 pounds, I just wasn't squeezing through. So that leaves the mystery of whatever is beyond this crevice, where I could not reach. And again, I tried. I just didn't fit. But I could see footprints of people that have gotten through in the past. Whatever they're doing down there, I'm going to leave that up to you and your imagination. And the writings of history, I would suspect. expecting. That was crazy. It's amazing what you find, even in the most remote areas. So many people blow by this location on Route 40 east and westbound, it's insane. There's really no reason to stop there. There's no services, there's no nothing. It's considered a modern day ghost town. And to be perfectly honest, I'm glad I went back and saw this, just because of the story itself. The fact that people are still going there and worshiping Satan and so forth, it is what it is. At any rate, there's a lot of beauty out there, people. And time is really, we're in some crazy times. Carpe diem. Seize the day. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment below, and I will return the favor. I am out.